Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, आप सबका स्वागत है, आप सबका अभिनंदन है। आज हम लोग श्रीमद् भागवतम सेकंड कैंटो का बिगिनिंग से पढ़ रहे हैं। हमने फर्स्ट कैंटो खत्म कर दिया था लास्ट क्लास में, सो अब ये सेकंड कैंटो शुरू कर रहे हैं। प्लीज जॉइन अस फॉर जय राधा माधव प्रेयर्स। हरे कृष्णा।
कृष्णा, सभी का अभिनंदन है, सभी का स्वागत है। आज भागवतम क्लास में जीव तत्व प्रभु जी श्रीमद् भागवतम के द्वितीय स्कंद का पहला अध्याय स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं और उसका टाइटल है द फर्स्ट स्टेप इन गॉड रियलाइजेशन और ये कैंटो 1 चैप्टर 1 है। आप में से जिनके पास भी श्रीमद् भागवतम का सेट नहीं है, आप उसे ऑनलाइन भी रेफ़र कर सकते हैं। उसकी लिंक अभी कुछ सेकंड्स में मैं कमेंट्स में शेयर करूंगी, आप वहां से रेफ़र कर सकते हैं। श्रीमद् भागवतम vedabase.com पर अवेलेबल है। आप वहां पर जाकर भगवद गीता भी पढ़ सकते हैं और श्रीमद् भागवतम भी पढ़ सकते हैं। अंबी पटेल जी, हरे कृष्णा। प्रियंका सिंह जी, हरि बोल। मानसी मिश्रा जी, हरि बोल। निवास पांडे जी, हरे कृष्णा। अरविंद जायसवाल जी, हरि बोल। अशोक पंखणिया जी, हरि बोल। चंद्रेश मेहरा, हरे कृष्णा। नीलम कुकरेती, हरे कृष्णा। हमारे काफ़ी सारे दर्शक जिनके नाम स्क्रॉल कर गए हैं, हम क्षमा चाहते हैं, हम आपके नाम रीड अलाउड करके आपको ग्रीट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं इस वक्त, लेकिन हमारी बेस्ट विशेस और ग्रीटिंग्स आपके लिए स्पेशली। हरि बोल।
हरे कृष्णा dear devotees, please join us for Mangalacharan prayers, and that is the invocation prayer of the very first chapter. So it is really in second canto that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam starts, that Shukdev Goswami starts to respond. So Sutta Goswami, he is responding with the beginning of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna.
लक्ष्मी कांगड़ा जी, राधे राधे। रेणु शर्मा जी, हरे कृष्णा। विश्वनाथ विसु जी, हरि बोल। अनुराग मनु जी, हरे कृष्णा। प्लीज जॉइन अस फॉर द प्रेयर्स राइट नाउ।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। श्रवतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः। हृदयन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहसतां। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया। भगवतेरुत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। हरे कृष्णा dear devotees, आप सबका स्वागत है। Today we'll be starting the study of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 2, Chapter 1, the first step in God realization. And here we learn in the very first step how we can serve Krishna with love, how can we serve him with devotion, how can we serve him with gratitude. But to be able to serve him, how do we realize him first, right? So in Bhagavad Gita, in the very second chapter, Lord Krishna is revealing that we are not this body, we are the spirit soul. And then that establishment of relationship is required. The relationship requires two personalities. So we are, spirit soul, not the body. But what is our purpose? Our purpose, Jivera Surupaya Krishna. So again, we have to understand who is God. And God is great, but how great he is, we come to know in this chapter. Hare Krishna. So that we can relate everything in Lord's perspective. Please join us in the recitation of the first verse, which is text 1. Shri Shuka Uvacha Variyaneshu te prashnaha krato loka hitam nripa atmavid sammatah pumsam shotavyadishu yaparaha. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Shri Shukdev Goswami said, My dear King, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Hare Krishna, please join us for Guru Pranati. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातदहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So let's look at what is the setting. The current setting is Shukdev Goswami in the very last chapter, in chapter 19 of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 1. He appeared at the place where Parikshit Maharaj, at the bank of the Ganges, where Parikshit Maharaj was fasting for 7 days. And somebody can ask, why is he fasting for 7 days? Because he has been cursed by a Brahmin boy to die in 7 days. This is the cover page of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 2. As you can see, these are the deities. We believe they are Los Angeles temple deities. So again, it is very auspicious to be able to see Lord. He appears mercifully towards us. He's giving us mercy by appearing in his deity form. He's appearing in his literary form as Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and he's appearing as his holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now, why was Parikshit Maharaj, fasting, as we were looking? Somebody can ask. So the reason behind it is because he was told that in 7 days he is going to die by he'll be bitten by a snake, a bird snake, Takshaka. And so he will die. So he immediately became renounced. He gave up the whole world because he was the emperor of the world. So he can give up the world. We cannot say we are giving up the world because we don't own the world. Hare Krishna.
So I have a quick question.
Yes.
This is for the benefit of all the viewers. दर्शकों के benefit के लिए जीव तत्वदास प्रभु जी इस वक्त हमें श्रीमद् भागवतम से ये पिक्चर दिखा रहे हैं जिसमें पूरी असेंबली ऑफ सेजेस है.
Yes.
और यहाँ पर जो ब्लू बॉडी दिख रहे हैं वो शुकदेव गोस्वामी हैं और उनके सामने फोल्डेड हैंड में परीक्षित महाराज बैठे हैं और ये हाँ जी देवर्षि नारद जी भी हैं और सारे सेजेस हैं, बड़े बड़े ऋषि मुनि आए हुए हैं. और इस पिक्चर से हमें ये पता चलता है कि परीक्षित महाराज कितना सबमिसिव और हम्बल मूड में शुकदेव गोस्वामी जी के समक्ष बैठकर श्रीमद् भागवतम का श्रवण कर रहे हैं और शुकदेव गोस्वामी जी श्रीमद् भागवतम का कीर्तन कर रहे हैं.
Yes. And so Parikshit Maharaj, he was cursed by a Brahmin boy. What was the name of the Brahmin boy? Shringi. And he cursed him because he was influenced by the age of Kali. Kalera dosh nidhe rajan. So again, in this age of Kali, the age is called Iron Age because it is an age of quarrelsome and hypocrisy. So it's an age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So again, people become quarrelsome, they become anxious, they lose, the long life. So only 100 up to 100 years. Now it is actually reducing to almost like 80 years or so. And people are lazy in this age. People are, Manda Sumanda Mateo. Sumanda Mateo means Manda is less. Sumanda is very less. Intelligence, Mateo, Mati, right? Manda Bhagya. And they are unlucky. And they are Upraduta. And they are constantly disturbed. The anxiety is always surrounding us. So in this age, what is the solution? To be able to realize God. But to be able to realize God, we should be able to relate to Him. And He mercifully, in this chapter, Shukdev Goswami is going to reveal how we can relate to Him with everything that we already realize in this material world, in this material universe. Hare Krishna. So Shukdev Goswami is first congratulating the king, King Parikshit. He's saying that your question is glorious. Now, what is the question, right? So we should know what the question is. Because it's glorious, we should be anxious to know. Question that Parikshit Maharaj, he placed in front of all the sages, as well as then later repeated in front of Shukdev Goswami is, what is the duty, the prime duty of all living entities in all conditions of life? And then he said, and what is the prime duty of one who is about to die? And that second question is more prominent because in the previous chapter, Sutta Goswami and Namasharanya revealed, and in purpose, Srila Prabhupada elaborated for our understanding that it is, everyone is facing death. Everyone is dying every moment. Our body completely, every cell is replaced in 7 years. And Parikshit Maharaj at least knew that he will die in 7 days. So he knew how much duration he has. But we have no idea, right? We are completely clueless. Death can knock at the door at any moment. So we have to always be prepared. Satatam kirtayantoma, right? So we should always be singing the glories, always be remembering the Lord, and always be engaging in devotional service, because we don't know what is there in the next moment, right? Nityam Bhāgavata sevaya, Bhagavate Ruttam Shloke, Bhaktir Bhakti Naishaki. So Nityam Bhāgavata sevaya. So we should always be engaging in serving, always reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We should always be serving the devotees, Vaishnavas. We should always be chanting the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And so here, he is revealing that this question that we are asking, that what a person should do who is about to die, is glorious. And the occupation duty of all humanity is, what should it be? That is glorious. And he is revealing that, you are focusing on not just on your death. And it's very interesting that near the moment of death, if somebody comes to that they have a very limited time, people have, as you can experience in this world, they get various kind of inclinations, various desires that they have been suppressing all their lives. They seem to manifest at this time, at the last moment of death. So again, at the moment of death, many people, they become so anxious. They start buying things, to kind of things that they could not buy, but they had been storing Lakshmi all their life, working very hard, thinking that they are sacrificing for the family. And then all of a sudden, they go out religiously, shopping and trying to get things. They become very anxious at the last moment, and they gather all the relatives, and they start, responding, showing them that, I'm about to leave, so you should serve me. This is your opportunity to serve me, and I'll bless you. Rich people do that many times, right? So those kind of propensities, they seem to arise. People, they want to stay. Means many of the, rich people in the old times, it is said that they were so much attached, they would, hide the treasure underground. And so they were so much attached that in their next birth, because their attachment, they would take the form of a snake just to guard the treasure. So in the old times, when people would try to dig out the treasure from the earth, underground, then they would encounter these snakes who would try to bite them, because they were these kings and these rich people who were attached to the wealth. So again, yet Maharaj Parikshit, he is the emperor of the world, right? He gives up the whole world, coronates his eldest son Janmejaya, King Janmejaya, as the emperor of the world, and he, in simple clothes, he decides to go at the bank of the Ganges, which is Yamuna Tattva, right? In Hastinapur, right at the doors of the palace, there was Yamuna River, she was flowing. So in previous chapter, Srila Jiva Goswami reveals, Srila Prabhupada in his purport is elaborating all the acharyas, they agree afterwards that it was Yamuna River where he was meditating. And Yamuna is also purifying just like Ganges. And after Sangam, she also is called as Ganges many times, Ganga River, right? And when Ganges River is sanctified 100 times, then it becomes Yamuna. Why? Because Lord he sanctified from his birth. The very night he appeared, he touched, Yamuna river by his lotus feet, and so she was sanctified. Lord performed so many wonderful pastimes in the Yamuna waters with the cowherd boys, with the gopis, with the cows, with the calves. So again, it is constantly getting sanctified, more sanctified than Ganges river, Ganga water. So again, this is where we hear the glories that he is there, and all these sages have gathered. Atri, Vishwamitra, Devara, Vyasdev, Narad Muni, Vashishta Muni, all these great sages, they have come with their disciples, they have gathered, and Suta Goswami was also in this assembly. And so he heard Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from Shukdev Goswami. So this is the beginning of that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that Suta Goswami heard, and now he is reciting at Naimisharanya in the assembly of the sages. And this is where later on Suta Goswami is reciting, and this is where he covered the whole first canto and the beginning of the second canto. The first verse, he is revealing.
Your hand is coming in the front.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Yes, so he is revealing the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in response to the question of the sages. He is revealing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to them, and so he is reciting Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which he of course started with, offering obeisances to Shukdev Goswami. He said, who can enter into the heart of all living entities. So again, Shukdev Goswami was his instructing spiritual master. So you can have many instructing spiritual masters, or only one initiating spiritual master. So Suta Goswami's initiating spiritual master was, who was his initiating spiritual master? Vyasdev, who happens to be the initiating spiritual master. So there was no initiation that Shukdev Goswami took. So that is also revealed in this chapter. Now we have covered it in the past many times that Shukdev Goswami was already a realized soul. Now let's hear what is Shukdev Goswami revealing to Maharaj Parikshit. He says that persons in material consciousness, so again, God consciousness or Krishna consciousness versus material consciousness. So in Krishna consciousness, we realize God, and to be able to switch from the boat of material consciousness to God consciousness, material realization that we experience in this world on a daily basis, to realizing God, right? That particular jump, that first step we'll be taking today. And he's saying that people in material consciousness, people who are associating with material, who realize matter as the body, so again, body as the very self, thinking that I am this body, they have various realizations because of interacting with matter. So we interact with sense objects, right? So when we interact with sense objects, that sensual enjoyment attitude is material consciousness. From that perspective, जो लोग भौतिक जगत में अपनी इंद्रियों को engage कर रहे हैं with various sense objects, they become attached, thinking that I am this body and I have to satisfy my senses. For them, in the center is senses, and all the activities are dovetailed to satisfy the senses. So they engage in sense gratification. Eat, sleep, and be merry. That's their mantra. While in Krishna consciousness with God realization, Lord Krishna is in the center, and all activities are dovetailed in pleasing Lord Shri Krishna. So that is the goal with God realization. We engage with Krishna consciousness, placing Lord Krishna in the center, and all our senses, instead of satisfying our senses, they are engaged by us in satisfying Lord Shri Krishna, who is the master of the senses, Lord Shri Krishna. And when he is satisfied, the senses are automatically satisfied, because the master can satisfy the servants. Hare Krishna. Devi Hiesha Guramayi. Lord Krishna says, Mama Maya Duratya, that this material energy of mine, so he's saying it is under his control, the material energy, and the senses are represented, they are part of material energy. There are 24 elements that we have taught in the past, they're part of material energy. So here Shukdev Goswami is revealing that people who are materially conscious, thinking I am this body. So in the beginning, before we come to God realization, we are thinking, right? So we think that I am this body. Now there is an interesting thing. As soon as people they come to know God realization, they don't understand the subject matter. Yet at the same time, they immediately say, "Okay, we can very quickly jump over, and we are fully God realized." Well, it's very interesting. Let me ask you a very simple question. What is the weight of a phone? Right? If you have a phone, what is its weight? So if you were to look at it, what's the weight of a phone? A teacher asked this to the students. And some students were thinking, oh, she's basically saying, well, in pounds or in ounces. So, or in kgs or, in grams. And she just smiled. She said that it is not important that what its weight is. What's important is how long am I going to hold it, right? If I'm making a phone call, 2-minute phone call, it doesn't matter. I can hold it, I can make the call, and I'm done with it. Very easy. But if I have to hold it for an hour on a conversation, my hand might start hurting, so I may switch it to my other hand, and that may start hurting. What if I have to hold it for 10 hours? Then it's really heavy, right? So how am I going to hold it? So maybe I'll just keep it down and put the speaker on because I can't hold it, right? It's too heavy at that point. What if I have to hold it for 7 days? Can you imagine? Maybe after a day I may fall unconscious, especially if I'm not eating anything. Yet at the same time realize that in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami, without eating, without drinking, they are so much engaged in God realization, Krishna consciousness, starting with this first step. So we should be paying attention to this first step because instead of just jumping over, anybody can realize God. Remember, how long can we continue to realize God without getting into material consciousness? That is the essence. We have to constantly, Nityam Bhagavata Seva, we have to constantly remember God. We have to constantly remember Lord Shri Krishna. We have to constantly chant about Him. We have to constantly hear about Him. That will keep us very much fixed at His lotus feet. That is the purpose we want to attain to. That is the stage we want to come to. So, sometimes there is a tendency, and this is the influence of material energy. This is Maya playing with us, making us think anybody can get God conscious. So that's why people say, I'm young right now. Why do I have to take to this bhakti? Why do I have to become a sannyasi? Why do I have to become renunciate? Well, it is a state of mind. Mayeva manadasva may buddhim niveshya. So Lord Krishna is telling in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, what is he saying? That constantly always think of me, right? Constantly meditate on me and always use your intelligence in serving me, your senses in serving me. Why is he giving? Because that is the purpose why we have received this body, right? So many times people, they think that it is sense gratification, but they realize, oh, we are making mistake. So they take this first step for God realization, to understand what is the purpose of life, why are we in stress, how can we overcome all kind of fears, how can we overcome all kind of anxieties. These amazing questions are answered in this chapter. How can we be happy, not just overcome anxiety, that is still null, okay, and zero, but how can we be Brahma Bhuta, how can we reach the state where in realization we are constantly experiencing transcendental bliss. तो ऐसे में हम लोग को समझ में आता है, यहाँ पे संक्षेप में बता रहा हूँ मैं हिंदी में, quickly I'm giving you the summary in Hindi, कि भगवान का साक्षात्कार, भगवान को कैसे समझें, भगवान कौन है, भगवान क्या है, क्यों हम लोग भगवान को समझें, इसका भी उत्तर मिलता है हमें, इसका भी आंसर मिलता है इस चैप्टर में. और ये भी पता लगता है कि जो हमारा जीवन है उसका क्या उद्देश्य है, हमें दुख क्यों होता है, हम एंग्जाइटी क्यों एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं, हमें सफरिंग क्यों होती है, हमें डिफरेंट तरह की कैलामिटीज जो फेस करते हैं, सफरिंग्स फेस करते हैं, व्हाट इज द रीजन बिहाइंड एंड हाउ कैन वी ओवरकम देम, कैसे हम इन सारे सफरिंग्स को ओवरकम करके प्रसन्नचित्त हो सकते हैं, हाउ कैन वी बिकम हैप्पी. So they have been answered. So Shukdev Goswami is continuing to reveal जो materialistic people होते हैं उनके बहुत सारे different type of aspirations होते हैं. They are constantly answering various kind of questions. They are constantly asking various kind of questions. In reality, अगर हम देखें, in our life, we are constantly either answering questions or asking questions. Right? And we are constantly meditating on what is the answer for this and what is the answer for that. And that's why we should take, shelter of Sadhu, Guru and Shastra. So there are three references. Sadhu, the saintly devotees of the Lord. Guru, the spiritual master. We should submissively inquire from the spiritual master. Shastras, the scriptures. When we read the scriptures, all these questions, they get answered. So सारे different type की जो हमें anxieties होती है, all of them are answered on a daily basis. And here is the proof. In the back, there is a statement by Mahatma Gandhi. This is what Mahatma Gandhi says. When doubts haunt me, when disappointments stare me in the face, and I see no ray of hope on the horizon, I turn to the Bhagavad Gita and find a verse to comfort me, and I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming sorrow. Those who meditate on the Gita will derive fresh joy and new meanings from it every day. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the father of the nation, right, of India. So again, he is revealing. So again, these are realizations. When we hear the realizations of great personalities, of great leaders, then we understand what is the direction. We should feel inspired. And what about India? Means here, Parishad Maharaj, he wants to hear. And Shukdev Goswami is revealing to him that his question to inquire about the duty of a man who is about to die is glorious. And अब Parikshit Maharaj को Shukdev Goswami reveal कर रहे हैं that this knowledge of Atma Gyan, right? That I am a spirit soul, I am not this body. So again, Jivera Surupaya Krishna Nityadas, and the various knowledge that pertains to the soul is of importance. But he is also identifying that there are four categories of people, right? Of them, only one category, the karmis, people who are materially inclined, thinking I am this body, they don't realize Atma Gyan. And so they suffer all their life. They are in constant anxiety. So Kali age, it influences such people and makes them its slave, basically. That's why to be able to overcome the effects of Kali, four regulated principles have been prescribed that we should follow. No meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. Because these are the four places, the place where meat eating is going on, place where gambling is going on, place where illicit sex is going on, prostitution, and place where there is intoxication is going on. All these places are the places where Kali resides, and Kali is a friend of irreligion. So it spreads irreligion. So we have to properly understand what is the purpose of this life and give up these four symptoms, because these, following the four regulatory principles, we come to the level of staying away from Kali. And on top of that, we should take to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So here Shukdev Goswami, he is revealing to Parishad Maharaj that we should not be, allow ourselves to become a victim of Kali, the age of Kali. Rather, we should overcome it. And he is giving this secret. Yeah, so when we talk about the 9 process of devotional service, he is identifying the 3 most important ones. When we take the first step, these most important ones enable us to overcome. He is glorifying it. So he is telling Maharaj Parikshit, Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagwan Ishvaro Harihi Shotavyaha Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Chithabhyam. So he is revealing Tasmad Bharat Sarvatma. So for this reason, to be able to overcome the influence of this age, to be able to overcome the miseries, to be able to overcome all kind of suffering, to be able to overcome the influence of this material world, to be able to overcome all kind of stresses, all kind of negativity that surrounds us. हम इन सारी negativity से उभर कैसे सकते हैं? And he's saying Bharat. Bharat means the descendant of Bharat. He's addressing Maharaj Parikshit. So it's directly, there is a conversation going on from Shukdev Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. He's saying the Sarvatma, the super soul, the soul of all soul, the Parameshwar, the super soul who is residing in the heart. And he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is also Ishvara. He is the controller. And Hari, he is the one who can take away all kind of anxieties, who can take away all kind of miseries, who can vanquish all negativity from our life. So he is glorifying that what is to be done about such a Bhagwan? One should hear about him. Shravanam, Shrota. Shrota is the audience, so they hear. Shrotavyaha. And then Kiti Tavyascha. So again, one should glorify. And Smartavyascha. And also remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagwan, Lord Shri Krishna. Icha is for cha, and Icha is like one who desires, right? Icha is desire, and Ichata is one who desires. Abhayam, freedom, right? Abhay is also like fearlessness. Bhay is fear, Abhay is fearlessness. So freedom from all kind of anxieties, from all kind of fears, from all kind of sufferings, from all kind of stresses, all kind of negativity. So one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about Shravanam, which is Shrotavyaha, Kirtitavyascha, so again, and glorify and remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Supreme Personality of Godhead has been called with 3 other names, right? Which is Sarvatma, the Super Soul. So he is residing in everyone's heart. You may be there, I may be here, but Super Soul is everywhere, right? He is in your heart, it is in my heart. And he does not divide, even though he appears divided. He's even between, the spaces between the atom. He's in every atom and spaces between the atom. So, the Super Soul is everywhere. And we understand from the Canto 1 where primary creation, right? So in the 3rd chapter we heard as how Lord taking Vishnu avatars as Mahavishnu from his pores, various universes are coming in. Then Mahavishnu expands into Garbhodaksha Vishnu, enters into each universe. And from the navel of Garbhodaksha Vishnu comes out the lotus flower where Lord Brahma, he is born. So, and at that point when Lord Brahma is about to do the secondary creation, Lord further expands in his Purusha avatar as Shirodaksha Vishnu, and that is the Super Soul. The Super Soul's name is Shirodaksha Vishnu. And he's residing in your heart, he's residing in my heart, he's residing everywhere. So that Super Soul has been identified here in this verse, which is, he's maintaining us, he's sustaining us as part of the secondary creation from Lord Brahma. And in every universe there is Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So Lord Vishnu maintains us, Lord Brahma, he creates, and Mahesh, Lord Shiva, he annihilates. So that the whole cycle can go on continuously and at the end of every day of Brahma, at the end of the Chaturyugas, and at the end of the life of Lord Brahma. So as Lord Vishnu, Mahavishnu, as he inhales, all the universes merge into him, and he exhales all of them, they come out from his body. So there are unlimited material universes. And from Bhagavad Gita we also hear that Lord is revealing that beyond the material universes is the spiritual universe. So those spiritual universes are 75%, they're 3 times more than the infinite material universes. So that is also glorious to hear. So here in this 2nd canto, we'll be covering 10 chapters. We'll be covering, now there's amazing great attractions that are coming ahead, right? As there is a Chaturshloki Bhāgavatam is also in the 2nd canto. The 10 subject matters that we hear in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam are also in the 2nd canto. So the first step, Shukdev Goswami is continuing to reveal that how we can understand Lord. And in this verse he is saying, we all want to be, we all have control on small things, but he is the supreme controller, Ishvara. Ishvara Paramaha Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. Ishvara Paramaha Krishna. So Lord Krishna is the supreme controller, Paramaha. So he is also the controller, Ishvara, and Hari, and he can take away all kind of miseries. Right? If you have some controller, you take his shelter, but if he does not give you any relief, then that's not much benefit, because he is only controlling you along with everyone else. Rather, you want to take, we all want to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who controls everything, who maintains everything, and he can take away all kind of anxieties, all kind of miseries. And for that, all we have to do is, we have to engage in hearing, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and constantly remembering the Lordship. And then he is, sometimes people say, okay, so if you have to realize, but maybe it's not for us. Right? That's another way of thinking about it. And so now, Shukdev Goswami is revealing who can benefit and what is the purpose of this life. How can we perfect our life? He is revealing, Etavan Sankhya Yoga Bhyam Sarva Dharma Swadharma Parinishtaya Janma Labha Parapumsam Ante Narayane Smritihi. Etavan Sankhya Yoga Bhyam Swadharma Parinishtaya. So he is saying that all these kind of variety of people, right? So he is identifying three kinds. Sankhya, the ones who are engaging, constantly, fully understanding the Sankhya Yoga. What is Sankhya Yoga? To understand the difference between matter and spirit, how matter pollutes and how spirit purifies, is pure in nature. What are the natures of the matter? What is the nature of the soul? What is the purpose of the matter? What is the purpose of the soul? How do you identify the matter? How do you identify the soul? And what happens when the soul and matter, they interact with each other? What kind of conditioning happens? What kind of, because of conditioning, pollution happens? And what is the destination of people who become materially inflicted, diseased, right? They are in a sick status. So that is where he is identifying that people who know Sankhya philosophy very well, who have the knowledge of matter and spirit. Then what is the second aspect? Is yogis, yoga. So ones who are yogis, so this is reference to the mystic yogis, who are meditating, who are constantly engaging in yajna, dana and tapa, and they are, even getting mystic powers because of that. And then swadharma parinishtaya. Swadharma is prescribed duties. So those who are fully engaged in their prescribed duties, identifying that Lord Krishna says that all the human race, they have been divided into 4 classes. Chaturvarna Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. So this Vibhagasha is the division, right? So the 4 varnas, the 4 classes of man are based on the influence of the material nature, Guna, and Karma is the activities they engage in. So those who are engaged, carrying out their prescribed duties. So all these 3 kind of people, they can attain the perfection at the end of their life, right? So what is the aspect of Janma Labha Parapumsam? So again, this is where the reference is given that the goal of life, the highest perfection of human life. So after we have taken birth, to make this birth successful as a human being, we can, either completely understanding the knowledge between spirit and matter, or we could be engaged in the yogic processes, or we could be perfectly discharging our prescribed duties. The perfection would come if we remember. It is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life, at the moment of death, right? So that is the purpose of life, that we remember Lord. And previously he reveals how we can remember Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Chetchathabhyam. So we can become fearless when we constantly hear, when we constantly chant, when we constantly remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we can become free from all kind of miseries, for all kind of anxieties. That is the secret, my dear devotees, my dear friends, that is being revealed here. Please try to understand. This is the process, and we can understand when Shukadeva Goswami is revealing, when Srila Prabhupada is identifying the purpose, that we should understand, we should make a sincere effort to take this first step to transition from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness, to understand that we are not this body, we are the spirit soul, and Jivera Surukoya Krishna Nityadas, we are eternal servant of Krishna, and that will make us happy. That will give us peace, that will deliver us from all kind of anxieties, from all kind of pains, from all kind of miseries. So we can constantly be engaged in devotional service and rejoicing at every moment, where every word is a song and every step is a dance. So please try to understand, such wonderful instructions have been provided here. So Sutta Goswami and Namasharana is continuing to reveal what Shukadeva Goswami is telling Parikshit Maharaj. And he is constantly saying, and he repeats again and again, comes back to the topic that it is very important for us to engage in hearing, chanting and remembering the Lordship. We go further, Shukadeva Goswami is revealing to Parikshit Maharaj, what is he saying? Etan nirvidyamananam Ichatam akuto bhayam yoginam nirpanirnitam harera namanu kirtanam. Etan nirvidyamananam, those who are completely free of all material desires. Now when he says nirvidyamananam, who are free from all kind of desires, that reference, the context has been identified, that it's not like you become desireless, you become selfless. You always have desire. That's the nature of the soul. To constantly have desire. It is an eternal function of the soul. Right? So you cannot change the nature. Rather, not having material desire, not having desire for sense gratification, but having the desire to serve the Lordship. So that is one extreme. And then Ichchatam, the ones who are Ichchata, right? Ichcha is desire. Ichchata is one who desires. The one who is on the other extreme, constantly having all kind of material desires. So first we heard one who's in full Krishna consciousness, right? Full cause realization, having no desire but only the desire to serve the Lordship. And on the other side, with material consciousness, on the other extreme, that having all kind of material desires, and everyone in between, all personalities in between. So he's in reality telling us that all kind of personalities, right, from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness, who are, when they want to become free from all doubts and fear, right? What should they do? What should they do to become doubtless and fearless? They should take to Yoginam Nirnirtam. So again, here he is saying, Nirpur, oh my dear king. He's again, Shukadeva Goswami is addressing Maharaj Parikshit. And he is saying that this has been established by the great transcendentalist. And what is this way? Harera Namanu Kirtanam. The chanting of the holy name, the constant chanting of the holy name is the way. It is the way, and it has been led by the great authorities, and it has been identified as the doubtless way, asamshaya, without any doubt. And it is fearless, abhayam. So it is without any fear. Akuto abhayam. It's a doubtless way, it's a fearless way to be able to attain success for all, right? Including those, so again, both the extremes have been identified. So we are somewhere on this, between this bandwidth of either an extreme of having all kind of material desires, an extreme of having no material desires but only Krishna consciousness to constantly serve Lord Shri Krishna at every moment. So those even who have become self-realized but a dint of transcendental knowledge. So this is Srila Prabhupada saying that even with a dint of transcendental knowledge, people can become fully realized. because they understand the purpose of life. So we should remember Krishna. So again here, sometimes on this extreme, people will say, okay, I have all kind of material desires. I want to enjoy this world. I want to satisfy my senses. How can I take to the chanting Hare Namanukirtanam? To become fearless, to become doubtless. How can I have this doubt that how can I get God realization, which is the topic of this chapter. So here, just by chanting of the holy name, how can you become doubtless? Has been revealed by the acharyas very simply. Atah Shri Krishna namadi na bhave grayam indriyaha sevon mukhehi jivado swayameva spurutyadaha. Atah Shri Krishna namadi. So the Nam Adi means all these name, form, activities, pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. Na bhaved grahayam indriya. Na bhaved. They are not perceivable by these gross senses. Our Gyanendriyas, we have 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Our eyes can see, our ears can hear, our tongue can taste, our skin can touch, right? And our nose can smell. So all these 5 senses, they cannot perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when we engage our tongue, sevon mukhehi jivado, when we engage our tongue in the service of the Lord, by the chanting of the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Sevon mukhehi jivado, swayam eva spuratyada. So Lord Himself manifests. So it is not that we can say, can you show us God or can we see God? We should serve so that God would want to reveal Himself to us. And when He reveals to us, then we become fearless, then we become doubtless. So this is the process. We have to take to the process. We cannot be in a proud status saying that we have to do this. We get to see the God and we have to, and it is very interesting. This is being diseased state, being inflicted, thinking I'm this body. In material consciousness, people are making such claims while they are trying to impress. So this is the interesting thing. We talked about samskaras. Samskaras are impressions. So in material consciousness, a person is trying to impress others. While in Krishna consciousness, the impressions are for improving oneself. So all the rituals with the essence, when we understand, they become spirituals. Otherwise, in material consciousness, they are carried out for name, fame and glories. And sometimes to ward off the ill effects, but with not proper consciousness, not at right place, not to the right person. And so, when you engage in yajna, dana and tapa, sacrifice, austerity and charity at improper place, at improper way, you don't get the right results. Rather, it causes you to get entangled in the evil of this material world. And what are the evils? These are janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudashana. So, birth, death, old age and disease. These are, the miseries of this material world. And so they get entangled in the cycle like a big Ferris wheel. They are constantly going through the same cycle. Punah charvita charvanam. Chewing the chewed. So they are constantly in this. There is no peace. There is no fearlessness. There are constant doubts. There is constant anxiety. There is constant suffering in this side. While we're taking to God realization, taking to Krishna consciousness makes us free from all kind of doubts, makes us free from all kind of anxieties, makes us, fearless and blissful. Transcendental bliss is what we experience. So that has been Hare Namanukirtanam. So again, by the constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord can gives us this fearlessness. And then he is identifying Shukdev Goswami that one should give up the family life. When people hear this, again, he is referring to Parikshit Maharaj that Parikshit Maharaj, you have done the right action. That knowing that in 7 days you will be giving up this body, then you have taken to the right process. And the process you can do is even by sitting at home. This interesting aspect is there. That Krishna consciousness is spiritualizing our very existence. We are spiritual beings. Why have material experience when we can have spiritual experience? Why live in fear when we can live fearless? Why have doubts when we can be doubtless? Why have anxieties when we can be free of all anxieties? Why be suffering when we can be in transcendental bliss? Why? Why not take to Krishna consciousness? It's a very simple process. Krishna consciousness, devotion service is simple for simple-minded, and it is very difficult for crooked-minded. So when we take to Krishna consciousness, we should be simply taking to the process, not trying to speculate and manipulate it, thinking that I want to enjoy the bliss here while continuing to satisfy my senses. So those are two boats going in opposite direction. So when they go in opposite direction, you are going to fall in between in this ocean of material nuisance. Rather, it is easier to follow Krishna consciousness where your Swadharma, your prescribed duties are aligned with your Sanatan Dharma, your constitutional position. That's why Varnashram Dharma is also called as Sanatan Dharma, because there the alignment of Swadharma with Sanatan Dharma, the constitutional position is taking place, and everything is done to satisfy Lord Shri Krishna. Now Shukdev Goswami is identifying about the Pranava Shabda, right? Om, A-U-M. And one should, meditate and chant Om, Om. He is identifying from the position of a mystic. Now it's very interesting that he is saying that one should take to the chanting of the, Om Pranava Sarva Vedeshi. Lord Krishna says, I am the Pranava Shabda. I am the invocation Om in all the Vedas, in the beginning of all the Vedic shlokas. This Pranava Shabda, this is called out. Yet at the same time, we hear that for the 7 days, Parikshit Maharaj was hearing the glories of Lord Shri Krishna. And the Acharyas revealed that instead of meditating and calling out to Om, which is the sound vibration of Brahman effulgence, we should hear the glories of Lord Shri Krishna, who is Para-Brahman, who is beyond the Brahman. And this is what Parikshit Maharaj is engaged in till the end of his life. So we should understand, not just take literally, but also understand the context, to give up material attachment, to reduce the material activities of eat, sleep, mating and defending. So these are materialistic activities we should try to reduce. We should not engage in overeating. We should not be engaged in oversleeping. We should not be engaged in over-enjoyment. We should not be engaged in over-protecting ourselves. Rather, we should be regulated in our ways so that we can attain the purpose of this life. हम लोग को अपना आहार, निद्रा, जो रिक्रिएशन हो रहा है उसको और अपना सिक्योरिटी, प्रोटेक्शन के ऊपर ज़्यादा फोकस नहीं करना चाहिए. Rather, उसको regulated रखना चाहिए, just to sustain the body and keep it fit. Now here, Shukdev Goswami is identifying that one should take to pranayama. And pranayama is very important, right? Because it keeps our body healthy. But that is not the goal. The goal is to engage in, serving Lord Shri Krishna in devotional service, so that the last moment we can remember Lord Shri Krishna. And what is the purpose? Why should we remember Lord Shri Krishna? Because that was not revealed here. Well, in Bhagavad Gita it has already been revealed. So you should understand, in the second canto, Srila Prabhupada is saying that this is the postgraduate study, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The elementary school study is Bhagavad Gita. So in the elementary school and the high school study, that is given in Bhagavad Gita. And the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Attaining the Supreme, Lord Krishna is revealing to Arjuna. What is he revealing? The effect of one who remembers him at the last moment of life, at the end of life. Antakale cha mameva smaran mutva kalevaram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nastatra samshayaha. Whoever remembers me at the last moment of their life, at the moment of death, will come back to me. Of this there is no doubt. So again, asamshaya, there is no doubt, there is no need to worry about. When we remember Lord Shri Krishna, and that is the highest perfection of human life, to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Right? Ante Narayana Smritihi. So that is the purpose. That's why we should be constantly hearing, chanting and remembering the Lordship. So the 3 processes of devotional service are most important to attain the perfection. Rather, even one is important, just like Parikshit, just by hearing he attains perfection. So now, One can come to the level of samadhi, meditation, but the meditation was in Krita age. It would take thousands of years to be able to see the Supersoul in our heart. So we cannot see Supersoul in our heart. And how can we realize God if we can't see the Supersoul in our heart? And it is already said, in Bhagavad Gita 12.5, Klesho adikta raste sham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir vyapam yir vidbhir vyapase deh vidbhir vyapase. So people who are embodied, people who have bodies, so we, the living entities who have this body as our vehicle, we cannot perceive the unembodied. So Lord is transcendental. He has a transcendental body. So we cannot perceive Him with our material senses. We cannot perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead with these gross senses. And we have the gross senses to perceive anything, to acquire knowledge, the knowledge acquiring senses. So how can we? It is very difficult, Lord Krishna says, through the process of meditation, to be able to see the Lord who appears as Super Soul in our heart, in His four-armed Vishnu form, as Shiva Dakshai Vishnu as is appearing. Very, very difficult. So it is easier to take to the chanting of the holy name, hearing Lord's name, His name, form, activities, pastime, and remembering those name, form, activities, pastimes. That is the process. So we have to understand that. And when we remember at the last moment, we will return back home, back to Godhead. We will return back home. So the spiritual world is called Vaikuntha. Vai is divide of what? Kuntha. Kuntha means miseries, all kind of anxieties, miseries, sufferings. So there is no suffering. Rather, when we go back home, back to Godhead, then it is all blissful. And we are directly interacting with Lordship. Constantly having, interacting in the five rasas, five main rasas. Shanta rasa, Dasya rasa, Vatsalya rasa, Sakhya rasa and Madhurya rasa. So these are the five rasas, five kind of relationships, primary relationships, and then there's secondary, rasas as well, 7 others, so 12, total of 12. And in those ways, we can continue to have wonderful interactions. So for happiness, 2 personalities are required. For an exchange, 2 personalities are required. For any link, 2 personalities are required. One is Jivatma V, and another one is Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman, Lord Shri Krishna. Bhagwan Ishvaro Hari, He is the Supreme Controller, and He can deliver us from all kind of miseries, all kind of anxieties. Now, the science of devotional service, which is starting with that faith. So first is the step of faith. The first step should encourage us to have the faith. And in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami describes the science of devotional service. Adav Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sango Atha Bhajana Kriya Tata Natha Nivrati Sya Tata Nishta Ruchis Tatha Atha Shaktis Tato Bhavas Tata Premadu Chanta Danchati Sadhaka Nam Ayam Premaha Pradurbhave Bhavet Kramaha. So the first step is having faith, Shraddha. So this is where, Shukdev Goswami is asking all of us, he is instructing Shri Parikshit Maharaj and Prabhupada. Shri Prabhupada is revealing that we should, with faith, take the instructions of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Shukdev Goswami reveals that I was already a self-realized person when I was born. Yet at the same time, I got attracted to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam when I heard the name, form, activities, pastimes, and glories of Lord Shri Krishna, which have been spoken in this enlightening verses. These are revelations to him. One who is already realized, one who is already Atmaram, who is already residing, rejoicing within himself. So we will also hear about Atmaram verse. So he is actually now, with his realization, he is revealing that how and why we should serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead with love, with devotion, with gratitude. And he is revealing that he understood Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Then the next thing he is revealing is that this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that I am going to reveal to you is a culmination of all the Vedanta Sutras, all the Vedas, that knowledge of the Vedas, and especially the topmost essence that has been placed in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And I learned it from my dear father, Srila Vyasdev. Srila Vyasdev is sitting in the assembly as an audience. Sometimes it's very interesting that, if a professor comes in, and he sees his students speaking, so sometimes they chastise that I was there in the audience, you didn't call me to speak. But here the example is being set that the student, his own son, Shukdev Goswami is the speaker, and Vyasadeva himself is sitting. Even his instructing spiritual master, Devashi Narad, is sitting in the audience. And there are great personalities like Vasishtha Muni is sitting, Devala sitting, all these personalities who are sitting in the audience. Vishwamitra is sitting in the audience. And here, Shukdev Goswami, who is the son and the disciple of Srila Vyasadeva, Srila Krishna-Dvaiparnya Vyasadeva, he is sitting and he is revealing that this I learned from my own father, and this is the perfect knowledge that I want to reveal to you. And he is saying that once there was a king by the name Katwanga, and this king was being, encouraged to participate in the war, So Devatas, they would call him to become the general of their army to lead against the demons, against the Danavas. And so demons and demigods, they would have these wars, and Katwanga, King Katwanga, he would be the general. Now this is before the birth of Kartikeya. Kartikeya is the general of the demigods. But there was a time that he was not even born. At that time, King Katwanga was the general. And so after a great war, the demigods, after they became victorious, they were very happy with King Katwanga. And they said, my dear King Katwanga, ask for a boon. Now what does King Katwanga ask is also glorious. Shukdev Goswami is revealing that at that time King Katwanga had this inquiry, please tell me how much of the duration of my life is remaining. This question is very glorious again because he is conscious of the duration of his life remaining, so he can meditate on the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. So that Ante Narayana Smriti, so that is the perfection of life, so that he can remember the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna at the last moment of his life, at the moment of death, so that he can return back home. At that time, the Devatas, they revealed that only a moment of your life is remaining. So King Katwanga, he gave up everything and he meditated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he returned back home, back to Godhead. So Shukdev Goswami is saying, even a momentary, meditation, the last moment he was able to attain. While you have 7 days, my dear King Parikshit, and this duration that you have is sufficient for you to become God conscious, to become God realized. You can realize God in this duration that you have till the moment of your death. So please hear to this narration of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam with attention, with complete absorption. So having that faith, he's invoking Maharaj Parikshit, have this faith. Maharaj Parikshit was already a pure devotee. He was always thinking and remembering Lord Shri Krishna. He was always remembering the beautiful form he saw when he was in his mother's embryo, Uttara's womb as an embryo. Parikshit Maharaj had seen Lord Shri Krishna. He had seen, so he was always remembering Lord Shri Krishna. He was always examining all personalities with Lord Shri Krishna. And with Shukdev Goswami, he's seeing a lot of resemblance. What are the resemblance? That Shukdev Goswami has the same bluish form as Lord Shri Krishna. He's similar age, 16-year-old Lord Krishna and Navayavana, right? So he is also 15 years, 9 months and 7 days. Lord Krishna always appears at that age. Even though he was on this planet Earth for 125 years, he never grew beyond that age. From his looks, from his roop, his form. And eternally in Golok Vrindavan, he is in that age. So again, that is, the supreme divine form of Lord Shri Krishna. But at the same time, to be able to perceive that supreme form, sometimes people who don't have enough faith, they tend to fall down, so they cannot relate to it. So Shukdev Goswami is giving that first step. So Maharaj Parikshit, he is asking that, okay, by putting kusha grass and sitting on it, a yogi is meditating Om and he is engaging pranayama, asana, pratyahara, and finally getting to the stage of samadhi. How can one achieve this? So he's asking that full absorption on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can one achieve that particular stage? And so, Shraddha Tatha Sadhu Sangha. And Parikshit Maharaj already has the association of devotees. he is directly having the association of Shukdev Goswami. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Kaya, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Kaya. So, the momentary association of a pure devotee of the Lord can give one all kind of siddhis, one all kind of benedictions. So, here the supreme benediction is being sought by Parikshit Maharaj. He wants to return back home. So, he is so lucky that he has Sadhu Sangha. Atha Bhajana Kriya. Now, bhajan is more than worship. Bhajan Kriya, if you pay attention, Kriya is activity. Bhajan is actually devotional service. So, Bhajan Kriya is devotional service. One engages in the association of devotees in devotional service. Shavaram Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam, the 9 process of devotional service. And also we hear in Nectar of Devotion, in Bhakti Rasana Sundar, Srila Rupa Goswami is revealing the 64 processes of devotional service. Of them, the 5 are most potent, that even a new person, someone new to Krishna consciousness, somebody taking that first step with faith for God realization, can experience the transcendental loving service, the transcendental love of Godhead. And what are these 5? Chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. GT worship. So worshipping the Lord. When we are reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we are worshipping the Lord, His literary incarnation, by our intelligence. And intelligence is about the senses. Always remember. What's the third one? Reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Swadhyaya. And then the fourth one is residing at a dham, where there is lordship, right? Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is literary incarnation. The place becomes dham. So this place is a dham where we have Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Even the virtual place, like the Bhagavad Gita, so many pages and so forth, they are all YouTube, WhatsApp, all these places where Lord's glories are being sung, they become dham, because that's where you automatically get attached, get sadhu sangha, you hear the glories of name, form, activities, pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. And finally, it is devotee association, sadhu sangha. So Parikshit Maharaj has sadhu sangha, and he is engaged in devotional service through shravanam, hearing the glories, and anartha nivritti syat. So all kind of bad, anarthas, things that don't have any meaning in spiritual life, those materially, inflicting diseases, the viruses of this material world, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsara, lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, delusion, and I already said envy. So they are washed off. Cheto Darpan Marjanam, we are washed off all these kind of bad qualities of this material world. And we started with faith, now we got stronger faith, Nishtha. Right? Nishtha is stronger faith with, stronger determination, Dhranavrata. We become Dhranavrata and we become interested in hearing the name, form, activities, pastime, that is Ruchis. So we get to that next level of Ruchi. And then comes Asakti, then we become attached to the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. We don't want to hear about any other mundane matter. We only want to hear about the name, form, activities, pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. Bhagwan ka naam, Bhagwan ka roop, Bhagwan ki leela, इन्हीं के बारे में सुनना चाहते हैं. फिर हमें आसक्ति होने लगती है, हम भगवान की आसक्त, भगवान से अटैच हो जाते हैं. और ऐसे में हमारे मन में different तरह की feelings आती हैं. Thinking, feeling, willing. So we get all these feelings that, these bhavas of gratitude, of love, of devotion towards the Lordship that we are engaging now. So even our activities, they start to show those. We start to, show our gratitude in our prayers. We start to show our gratitude even in hearing, with attentive hearing, with absorption during hearing. Right? So again, every process becomes more deeper. We start to get the depth, not just the quantity, but also we start to attain quality. Quantity is first step. Attain the quantity. First, we should take to minimum 16 rounds of chanting, then start to develop quality, start to develop that depth And so the love of Godhead that manifests in our heart, and that is the goal of life. And so we can constantly engage in the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sometimes people, they don't understand that it is the quality that changes. So they say, okay, you guys are chanting, all the devotees, they are chanting the holy name, minimum 16 rounds. Then you come to the 64 rounds. Okay, you're taking of this, what is after chanting? What do you do after chanting? When they hear the answer, it is more chanting, they get confused. They're like, okay, you are chanting for more chanting. Yes, because now the chanting becomes spontaneous. It is with love, with depth, with gratitude, with devotion that we want to call out to the Lordship. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Previously we were chanting to become fearless, to become doubtless, to become free of all kind of anxieties. Now we are chanting because we are immersed in this ocean of bliss, the transcendental bliss, the overflowing ocean of happiness. We are taking dip in it when we are chanting the holy name. So now, as Parikshit Maharaj is asking this question, please tell me how I can meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he understands what's the purpose of life. Shukdev Goswami, he starts describing Virat Rup, the universal form of the Lordship, that the yogi while sitting should meditate on the universal form. Now why universal form? Somebody can ask that. So Srila Prabhupada very nicely revealed that we people, when they are not in God realization, that first step is to be able to relate, understand that how everything in this material world that we interact with, that we see, that we can perceive, is related with Lord Shri Krishna. That is the first step in God realization. Material realization is thinking that everything in this material world is for my enjoyment, for my sense pleasure, for my sensual gratification. That changes, that change everything, it's all in the mind. To understand it properly, to understand that everything is in relationship with Lord Shri Krishna. Right? So that is the change that is being called out in this first step, so that we can serve the Lord with love and devotion. And Virat Rup manifestation of the Lord is basically a challenge to the atheists, those who don't want to believe that there is a God. Right? They don't believe that there is God. They are thinking that this is a Big Bang theory, that suddenly all these chemicals they mixed in, Big Bang happened in the universe, and all these planets came into being, and all the living entities came into being. And then also for people who are in this material world seeking sense gratification but suffering, and they are trying to find a solution from the suffering, artho, they are distressed. It is a favor to them that Lord is revealing in his Virat Rupa, so manifested form. And so this is from the perspective Shukdev Goswami is revealing. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, when he revealed his Vishwarupa, Virat Rupa, right, universal form, Vishwarupa is universal form, and Virat Rupa is again a gigantic form. So again, sometimes it is confused with Vishwarupa, which is the universal form. Here the word Virat Rupa has been used. It refers to Vishwarupa, so understand that this is the universal form of the Lordship. The description, the picture of that Vishwarupa is actually coming from this chapter, the second canto, first chapter in Bhagavad Gita. So that form of Lord Shri Krishna, let me bring it up. So this form that Arjuna sees in Bhagavad Gita is actually being described in this chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, second canto, chapter 1. So here this form is being, the description was not very clear. He was saying thousands of hands, thousands of legs, thousands of faces, and he was describing, but that complete description, to be able to draw that picture, is coming from this chapter. So please try to understand. Shukdev Goswami is revealing how the various 14 planetary systems are situated in different parts of the body. So he's identifying that these 14 planetary systems. From Garbhodakshaya Vishnu perspective, we already covered in the first canto that these 40 planetary systems are in the stem of the lotus flower. And on the top is Lord Brahma, who's on Satyaloka. Now to understand it with things that we can perceive. Now even to be able to perceive different planets and understand different planets, we have to have some greater level of knowledge. So it's coming from greater level down to the lower, to the lower, to the lower, and based on wherever we are able to understand and relate to things in association and relationship with Lord Shri Krishna. So people who can perceive different planetary systems, who are good with astronomy and they can understand the different planetary systems that are in this material world, they would be able to understand from this first set of description that Shukadeva Goswami told us. He says that Patal is at the bottom of the Lord's feet, the Lord's soul, the bottom of the lotus feet of Lord's Vishwarupa, the universal form. That is where Patal is. And the Rasatal is the heels and toes of that universal form. So this is again the gigantic form. And it is said that when we look at the details, we should always look from the lotus feet and then slowly move our eyesight up, looking at his limbs, understanding, having a full conception of the whole transcendental form of the Lordship, we should be looking at, and slowly we should rise to the face. So here, understand from that perspective as how we are rising above and above. And the anchors, right, of the universal form of the Vishwarupa are the Mahatal planets, and the shanks, they constitute the Talatal planets. And the knees of the universal form are the Sutala. So Sutala is more opulent than Indralok, right? And it is at Sutala that Bali Maharaj is residing and his worshipable deity Vaman Dev was there as well. Why do I say was there? Because Lakshmi Ji, she got him back to Vaikuntha. We covered that story of how Raksha Bandhan came into being, right? That festival of Raksha Bandhan. Sister tying a thread on brother's arm, hand, on his wrist, and brother providing protection, fulfilling the desire of his sister. So that beautiful festival came from that pastime. And the two thighs of the universal form are Vitala and Atala. And then the hips are Mahitala. And the outer space is the depression of his navel. So outer space, when you think about it, that's the depression of the navel. It's deep. So Lord's navel is deep. So Shukadeva Goswami, his navel, when it was said, when he appeared, is also deep. But Shukadeva Goswami is a Jiva Tattva. He is not Paramatma. He looks like one, just like Uddhava, a Jiva Tattva, but he looks very much like Krishna. So that is what has been identified. And the chest of the original personality of this gigantic universal form is the luminary planetary system. When you talk about luminary planetary system, the stars come to mind, especially sun and moon. So at the night time, luminaries are being called out. So at the night time, the luminaries, the main is Chandrava, right? Moon. And in the daytime, it is sun. So they are at the chest level. And then further up is the neck, is the Mahar planets. And then the mouth is the Jana planets. Even above neck is the mouth, which is Jana planets. And above that is the forehead, right? The forehead is the Tapaloka. So at that level they are residing. And above that is Satyaloka, which is the head. And of he who has thousands heads, right? Because Arjuna, when he was describing the universal form, he said, I can see thousands of hands, thousands of heads, thousands of faces. So he is identifying that way. So thousands of heads. The topmost planetary system is known as Satyaloka, or sometimes also called as Brahmaloka, because Lord Brahma is residing. Yet at the same time, Brahma also refers to the aspect of spiritual, but it is not in the spiritual world. In the material universe, the topmost planet is Satyaloka. And now, people who can't relate to the astronomical aspects, then they may be able to relate to the personalities who are ruling different planets and different places. So now he is giving that second level of description for people who can relate to different kind of living beings that are existing. He's saying that the arms are the demigods, right, headed by Indra. The 10 directions, so north, south, east, west, up and down, then north, east, northwest, southeast, southwest, right? So all these 10 directions are his ears. So when somebody calls us, our ears can immediately predict which direction the sound is coming from. So we turn our head in the direction of the sound. Is it coming from here? Is it coming from here? So that's how the ears are direction oriented. And eyes normally see in the front and the sides, but it is ear that tells it to see left or right based on the perception of direction. We all can relate to this. So it is a very nice way to understand that Lord's ears are the 10 directions, right? And the physical sound is the sense of hearing. So what do you hear? Sound. So we can relate to, oh, the universal form, the sound is the sense of hearing. So the sound is the, hearing is the, way we can perceive sound. And the nostrils are the two Ashwini Kumaras. Now Ashwini Kumaras are the Vaidyas, they are the doctors of the demigods. So nostril is where, we can sustain our existence. And breathing is very essential. That's why people do pranayama. If you go to the hospital and sometimes people are infected, the doctors immediately try to provide them, the respiratory system immediately gets affected. Especially in this time of pandemic, we see this, right? That their respiratory system is attacked by the virus. So again, the Ashwini Kumaras, we can directly relate. The nostrils are the two Ashwini Kumaras. And the material fragrance. So again, how do you experience? The nose perceives, what it is, does it perceive? Fragrance. It perceives different kind of smells. So that is his sense of smell of the universal form. So we can relate to the universal form of the Lordship. That is the fragrance is his sense of smell. And his mouth is the blazing fire. So when we hear about the blazing fire, we immediately are reminded of that peace formula 529 verse of Bhagavad Gita. Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam. So he is the beneficiary of all kind of sacrifices. So in fire sacrifices, when various oblations are done, so that fire is called the mouth, right? The blazing fire, right? Of Yagya Purusha. Yagya Purusha is again the fire is being identified, and those mantras when we pay oblation is ending with Swaha. Swaha is the wife of Yagya Purusha, Radharani, her expansion. So again, we are giving it to Mother, all our oblations, and who is delivering it to the Father. So we are feeding, so again, the fire of sacrifice. So mouth is the blazing fire. So when we can perceive all these things very nicely, we can directly build what we see in this material world, directly relate it with the Lordship, with his universal form that is perceivable in this material universe. And then the outer universe, these seem like dark holes. So the sphere of the outer universe constitutes the two eye pits. Pits are like the holes of the eyes. And the eyeball is the sun. So again, that has been the power of seeing the sun. When the sun comes out, then we can see things. Right? So that is the eye of the supreme form of material universe, so Vishwarup. So that is how we see that the sun and moon, they are the eyes of the Lord, because in their light we can see things. And the eyelids, when they close, it's night. When they open, they're days, because when they close, that means sun is not visible to us. And that's how night happens, because the eyelids have covered the sun. And then days, when the eyes are open and we can see the eyes. So when we can see the sun, it is daytime. The movements of the eyebrows. Somebody becomes angry, the eyebrows go. Somebody becomes happy, the eyebrows relax. Somebody is tense, again the eyebrows. They have their movements. So these are Brahma, and similarly, supreme personalities of this material world, they reside. So again, those eyebrows, they're showing different kind of actions. So Adi Devi, right? The natural disturbances that happen, that is also because of the movement of the eyebrows of the universal form, Vishwarupa. That we should be able to understand. So those are the movements. And his palate is the director of water. So the palate, from where the saliva comes in, the palate is also being identified. Varundev, so different demigods. Varundev is the demigod of the sea. So he's the controller of the sea, all the water bodies. So he is the palate of the universal form. And the palate tastes something, right? So that taste has to come. So the juice or the essence of everything, whatever we can taste, we should remember, oh, this is the tongue of the universal form. And now they're saying that when we hear the Vedic hymns, when we hear the Pranava, Shabda Vedeshu, all the Vedic mantras and the shlokas and the Mahamantra, so these are cerebral passage of the Lord. And now comes the point. So the jaws of the teeth, what are they of the universal form? Yama, the Lord of the death, so again, Yamraj, he is the jaws. So people who do sinful activities, they are crushed by the jaws. So they are crushed by Yamraj. So we can understand that people who are performing sinful activities, any sinful activity that we perform, if we don't fix our ways, if we don't engage in yajna, dana, tapa, sacrifice, austerity and charity, then we are going to be crushed, we are going to be punished by Yamraj, that is being crushed between the jaws of the teeth of this universal form. So that should also, sometimes people become devotees because of fear, but then it is enlightening when they realize that they have not just become fearless and doubtless, but they are experiencing transcendental bliss, they are experiencing supreme benediction in this very life by spiritualizing the very existence. And at the time, the art of affection is a set of teeth. So, when somebody is showing their teeth, in a nice way, so it is affection. So that way, when you see someone showing affection, you say, oh, I'm seeing the universal form, teeth of the Lord. Yeah.
So Jiva Prabhuji is explaining right now the Virat, universal form, Vishwarup of Lord Krishna, क्योंकि उसका जो एक एस्पेक्ट है उसका किस तरीके से हमें समझना चाहिए, it is important for us to understand.
Hare Krishna. तो जब हम किसी को मुस्कुराते हुए affectionately देखते हैं तो we understand, oh, the universal form, the affection of the Lord, that is showing off his teeth. Now sometimes with affection, sometimes very interesting things come. When we see someone smiling and we are lured by their smile, we understand, oh, the universal form, the illusory energy, the one that deludes us, makes us forget that we are the soul, makes us think that we are this body, that Maya is his smile. So Lord's smile is very enchanting. In the material world, that enchantment comes with delusion. So when people, they fall prey, so they are saying, I'm just, attracted, like a moth gets attracted to the flame, I'm getting attracted by Maya. That is the smile of the universal form. So again, we should be very, very careful of that smile, because in the next moment, when we get allured by the smile of the universal form and engage in sense gratification, then right behind the smile are those jaws of the teeth, right? Those teeth, Yama is ready to punish people who are engaged in sense gratification. And the great ocean of this material creation, right, is nothing but just the glancing of it. So again, Lord Krishna says that, just with my glance, in Bhagavad Gita is saying, I am impregnating this material universe, and all these kind of living entities, chara-chara, moving and non-moving, they manifest. So all the living entities, they get embodied, they get this body as the vehicle. So we get this body as a vehicle because when Lord Krishna, he glances on the material energy. And in Purāṇa and other places, the very nice reference has been given that Lord Shiva and Devi. So again, Lord Shiva is the one who is, when Vishnu Tattva is in contact with Maya, becomes Shiva Tattva. So that reference is also being, justified here very nicely from Shiva Purāṇa. And so, sometimes people would look at it that glancing over the material nature, because of Lord's glance, all these people are born, all the people are dying. So again, all this thing has been very nicely being carried out. Lord is maintaining everyone. So this is the glance of the Lord that they come into being. And Yamraj is the one that they get punished through. So that's his teeth. So we have to be very, very careful, not be allured by Maya, the smile of the universal form, Vishwarupa of Lord Shri Krishna. So again, in this material world, we can perceive these material things, so we can relate them with Lord Shri Krishna. That is the purpose. Shivdev Goswami is revealing that people who cannot perceive the Lordship, but they can perceive these material things, they can bring and relate them with the universal form, Vishwarup form of Lord Shri Krishna, so that they can bring everything in relationship with Lord Shri Krishna, so that they can take that first step of God realization. God realizations, we can realize God in everything around us. That is the purpose. And then he is saying that the upper lip is modesty and the hankering is his chin. So sometimes people, they are hankering and you ask them, so they relate to this particular aspect that yes, hankering is his chin. I'm just, scratching the beard of the Lordship, they're saying, not realizing that that is a useless activity. Hankering, rather become fearless, become doubtless, give up all hankering, give up all anxiety, give up all kind of lamentations, give up all kind of material aspirations by taking to devotional service. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Jas Shrotavyasya Kirtitavyasya Smartavyasya Chechathabhyam. So again we can be delivered from all kind of fears and doubts when we take to the hearing, chanting and remembering the Lordship. And religion is his chest. So yes, people, they realize that religious people, they are very dear to the Lord. Of course, when we are doing it unmotivated, uninterrupted, then we will, Lord, he is Bhāv-Janadana. So he understands what, we have the essence, the mood as how we are approaching. So he is Bhakta Vatsala. So for his devotees, he keeps them very close to his heart, right to his chest, Vatsala. So again, that's, is religious principle, all religious principles chest. And then people, when they are engaged in sinful activities like gambling and all, Gauranga Das Prabhu, His Grace Gauranga Das Prabhu, he says it very nicely, that they say we are massaging the back of the Lordship because the back, is the irreligion. And Brahmaji, who generates all living beings in the material world, like the creation. So this is secondary creation caused by Brahmaji of this material universe, within this material universe. That creation, so Brahmaji is his genitals, because progeny happens through genitals. And Mitra and Varuna are the two Adityas. They are the two testicles of the universal form. The ocean is his waist. So again, that's where genitals, near the waist area they reside. So the ocean is the waist, and the hills and mountains are the stacks of his bones. So when we look at the great mountains and hills, then we understand that these are the bones of the universal form. Everything that we see in this material world, we should be able to relate to the universal form. The rivers are the veins of the gigantic body, so the universal form. And then the trees, they are the hair of this universal form. So it is also, we can see trees with that perspective, hair of the universal form. Rivers as the veins of the universal form, carrying the blood, which is like, of course, the flow, the liquid. And the omnipotent air is his breath. So the breathing, the universal form is breathing air. So this is omnipotent. Air is everywhere on this planet Earth. So again, and the passing ages are his movements. So as ages are passing, Satyagura, Rajagura, Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Kali Yuga. So all these 4 ages as they are passing, and then the whole cycle is repeating itself 1,000 times in a day of Brahma. Those are his moments, and his activities are the reactions of the 3 modes of material nature. So all kind of activities that we do, those reactions are his movements. Sometimes people say, oh, we are doing all these activities, those are his movements. No, it is the reactions. What we get, the sinful reactions are because of sinful activities. Those reactions are the movements of the universal form. And the pious activities lead to, pious reactions, so that we get to enjoy this material world. And those material benedictions that we get, which are temporary in nature, are because of the movements. Again, they are also the reactions of the pious activities of the universal form. So we should understand. Then he is calling out to Parikshit Maharaj that the clouds that carry water, the water carrying clouds, they are the hair of the universal form, the Vishwarup. जो बादल हैं उनके बाल हैं, hair, on his head. And So again, he's continuing to describe that the mind is the moon. You know, Shukdev Goswami revealing to Parikshit Maharaj that the mind of the universal form is the moon. So sometimes when people say, lunatic, they call someone lunatic. Lunatic comes from luna. Luna comes from luna, which is moon. So it is the moon that causes the effect, and it controls the mind. It influences the mind of different living entities. That has been called out in this description by Shukdev Goswami. And he is continuing to saying that the ego is Rudradev, Lord Shiva. The principle of Tattva, the matter, is the consciousness of the omnipresent Lord. And horse, mule, camel and elephants, they are the nails of the universal form. And all the wild animals, the four-legged animals, all the quadrupeds, they are situated at the waist of the, at the belt zone of the Lord. Above the waist is the belt zone, right? And the waist is the ocean, so all the aquatics can be counted there. And the variety of birds that we see in this, material world, that we see in this भौतिक जगत में हम जो पक्षी देखते हैं उड़ते हुए, those are his masterful artistic sense. Those are his artistic strokes. And Manu, the father of mankind, is his emblem of his intelligence, and the humanity is his residence. Humanity where everyone is engaged in religiosity to satisfy, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, performing Swadharma aligned with Sanatana Dharma, is the place where Lord resides. And now he is saying that Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Charanas, angels, so these are all human, variety of human races. There are 4 lakh categories of humankind. So these varieties are his musical rhythm, because they are all musicians, or they are apsaras, are also like dancers. So there is musical rhythms, and the demonic soldiers are his prowess. So sometimes even the demonic soldiers, demonic people, when they use their power, Lord Krishna says, Parisham Nishar, and the ability in man. So they are misusing the ability they have been provided. But then we see that ability because we get sufferings through them, right? So they are his wonderful prowess. And now people who cannot even relate to all these aspects, people who are very much into the scholarly things, right? They are into the 4 classes of man, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. They would say, but how do we relate to our Varnas and all this stuff? And Lord Krishna says that the Brahmanas are the face of the universal form. The Kshatriyas, they are the arms of the universal form, because with arms we can perform various activities to sustain the body and the whole universal form. From that perspective we can look. And the thighs are the Vaishyas, and the Shudras are the protection, under the protection of his feet. So again, the feet are sometimes also said to be of the universal form. That's where the Shudras are. So in the body we can relate to it. And finally he says one must concentrate the mind on him, the universal form. This is for people who are with material consciousness, who want to take that first step for God realization. They can realize everything in this material world in relationship with God, and so they can meditate on him. And only the all blissful absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there is nothing else in this material universe for their perspective, right? From that perspective that they can perceive. Otherwise one will be misled if one does not think of everything that's surrounding us in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then one will be misled, and that will cause one's own degradation, and so one will fall down. So we don't want to fall down, we want to take to the process. And so the process is very simple. It is simply starting with hearing, chanting and remembering. And for people who cannot directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they get attracted by the universal form, the Vishwarup incarnation, the universal form of the Lordship, the manifestation of the Lordship in this material universe. And finally they can take to this first step and continue to engage further by the glorification and chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And as we understand in the previous chapter, here again, Srila Prabhupada identifies that when we chant, we should try to avoid the 10 offenses to the holy name. And also inattentive chanting is also an offense to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna. So this is where Shukdev Goswami is finishing this chapter, telling the first step of God realization, encouraging Parikshit Maharaj to engage in hearing, chanting and remembering Lord Shri Krishna, so that he can realize God in everything that's surrounding us, every moment, anything that our senses are perceiving, we can relate to it, and so we can serve Lord Shri Krishna with love, with devotion, with gratitude, with quality. So we are enhancing our quality every moment. It should not become like, mechanical cycle, but we should be very mindful, because that's the purpose. We are not doing it just to the sake of doing. Then it becomes a ritual. We should keep it spiritual, keep the spirit, keep the essence in it. Hare Krishna. This is where this chapter ends. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Śrīla Bhagavad ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnavind ki jai. Nitai Go Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा। सभी व्यूअर्स का वेलकम है, और काफ़ी लोगों ने काफ़ी एंड में ज्वाइन किया। उनके बेनिफिट में बता दें हम कि आज जीवा तत्व दास प्रभु जी ने श्रीमद् भागवतम का सेकंड कैंटो फर्स्ट चैप्टर पे बहुत ब्यूटीफुल लेसन शेयर किए हैं, एंड वी गॉट मोर इंसाइट एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑन हाउ वी कैन सर्व कृष्णा with love by following the 9 processes of any of the 9 processes of devotional service, and it all begins with hearing and chanting. So now Jiva Tattva Prabhuji, can we take some questions?
Yes, please.
So Renu Sharma ji ne 3-4 questions post kiye the.
Yes.
I will try to read them out to you. Hare Krishna. Dear viewers, if you have any questions, आप कमेंट्स में अपने क्वेश्चंस लिख दीजिए। आपकी जो भी स्पिरिचुअल इंक्वायरीज हैं, जीव तत्व प्रभु जी विल आंसर योर क्वेश्चंस नाउ। हरे कृष्णा। लेट मी रीड आउट द क्वेश्चंस।
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so Renu Sharma ji has asked, Hare Krishna Prabhu ji, if we are basically the soul, then why God has created our physical body and this physical world? So she has asked many questions within the same comment, and further she asks, what is the need of it? We could have simply served God while being just a soul in the spiritual world. So basically, what was the need to be in the material existence in this physical world?
Hare Krishna. So Renu Sharma ji ne pucha hai, what is the purpose? Why do we get this material body in this material world? What is its purpose? Why we could have simply served the Supreme Personality of Godhead Lord Shri Krishna in the spiritual world as soul? Hare Krishna. Very important question. There are 2 purposes why Lord creates this material universe. It is us, we living souls, have turned our back towards Lord Shri Krishna. Lord Krishna has given us all freedom, right? So we see that Lord Krishna is in the center, and everyone in Vaikuntha, everyone in the spiritual world is serving Lord Shri Krishna in various rasas and various forms, with various relationships. But some become envious, and so they say, why is every time Lord Krishna is being in the center? I want to be the enjoyer, I want to be in the center. So such people, they are allowed to come to the material universe so they can enjoy. So that's the first sense. It is because of our free will, because we want to lord over the material nature, Lord Krishna has created the material world where we can go and enjoy, right? That's the first purpose. Second purpose is, now many living entities, many souls, they realize that this world is Janm Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanudasham. It is a place of misery where this constant cycle of birth, death, old age, disease is going on. And now they don't want to suffer anymore. They realize that this mode of sense gratification, the sensual enjoyment, is actually a door of miseries, of suffering, eternal suffering. So they want to go back home, back to Godhead. So we have this opportunity in the human form of life that we can see God realization. Because soul is suffering, how do they come back home, back to Godhead? So they have to realize God. So that's the second purpose, so that we get the human form, we realize God, we become His pure devotees, and we can return back home, back to Godhead. When we return back home, back to Godhead, at that time we get spiritual bodies. Soul on its own still is fully dependent on Lord Krishna. So, Narayan Purāṇa. So, even though we may not take shelter, but we are fully dependent on Him. So, He provides us spiritual body so that we, having that spiritual body, can interact with Him. So, we always need shelter. We are Tatastha Shakti. We are the marginal potency. Either we take shelter of Maya, where we get material body, or we take shelter of Yoga Maya, Radharani, where we get spiritual body. On our own, we do not have the ability to serve. We are just spiritual spark, right? Same in quality but different in quantity. Hopefully this answers your question. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा. सो प्रभु जी ने बताया कि हमें जो मटेरियल बॉडीज मिली हैं, ओरिजिनली हम सब स्पिरिचुअल एंटिटीज़ हैं जो भगवान के साथ लविंग रिलेशनशिप में हैं, लेकिन ड्यू टू आवर कंटामिनेशन, ड्यू टू आवर एनवी, वी हैव टू कम इनटू दिस मटेरियल एग्जिस्टेंस. और भगवान के ही अरेंजमेंट से वी कैन ऑल्सो गो बैक होम, बैक टू स्पिरिचुअल बॉडीज, टू हैव अ लविंग रिलेशनशिप विद हिम. ये सब भगवान की ग्रेस से होता है और हमारी डिज़ायर्स और हमारे एफर्ट्स से होता है. सो प्रभु जी, रेणु शर्मा जी ने एक और क्वेश्चन पूछा है. एक्चुअली उन्होंने 4 क्वेश्चंस पूछे हैं. सेकंड क्वेश्चन है, डू प्लांट्स एंड ट्रीज ऑल्सो हैव सुपर सोल इनसाइड इट?
यस, रेणु शर्मा जी का क्वेश्चन है, डू प्लांट्स एंड ट्रीज ऑल्सो हैव सुपर सोल इनसाइड? जो पौधे हैं, जो वृक्ष हैं, उनमें भी, ट्रीज में भी क्या सुपर सोल होती है? परमात्मा होते हैं. यस, Paramatma is in everyone. All living entities who are embodied in this material world, He is everywhere, even between He is in every atom. Right? वो हर कण में होते हैं, यहाँ तक कि space between the atoms He is there. Now this is one Paramatma who is expanded to be everywhere. He appears divided, but He is never divided. Right? You have a Paramatma in your heart, I have a Paramatma in my heart. Every tree, every plant has a Paramatma in it. In every cell there is Paramatma. Yet at the same time, it is not that He is divided into many. He is one Paramatma who is expanded and is residing everywhere. Hare Krishna. Hopefully this answers your question.
और उसी के साथ उन्होंने एक और क्वेश्चन भी ऐड किया था. जैसे कि आपने अभी बताया कि सभी प्लांट्स में भी परमात्मा है, तो यस, प्लांट्स एंड ट्रीज. इसी तरह उन्होंने बोला कि क्या सुपर सोल इज देयर इनसाइड द एनिमल्स आल्सो, इवन इनसाइड पॉइजनस एंड वायलेंट एनिमल्स लाइक स्नेक्स, लायंस, क्रोकोडाइल्स?
हरे कृष्णा. रेणु शर्मा जी का क्वेश्चन है, इज देयर सुपर सोल इनसाइड ऑल अदर एम्बॉडीड लिविंग बीइंग्स इंक्लूडिंग द beasts, right, animals, lions, and even the snakes, right? They slither, they don't have legs, so they crawl on the surface of the earth. So answer is yes, He is in everyone. These are different kind of bodies, just understand. And in the body there is soul, Atma. We, the living entities, are the soul. We are in the body, and right next to us, even closer, before the senses come to know, the super soul comes to know what the soul is desiring. So the super soul Paramatma is also there, and our senses come to know of it later. The super soul actually comes to know our desires immediately, and is the overseer and permitter. He is seeing everything that we are engaged in, what we are doing, and He permits various activities. So as overseer and permitter, He is sanctioning everything. Yes, so He is everywhere. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा. सो आपने जो आज क्लास दी, सर्विंग, लर्निंग टू सर्व कृष्णा विद लव, दिस क्वेश्चन इज रिगार्डिंग दैट सब्जेक्ट. सो क्या हमारे गुरु को जब हम सर्व करते हैं, आर वी प्लीजिंग कृष्णा ऑल्सो? कैन यू प्रोवाइड सम इंसाइट ऑन दिस? व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन सर्विंग गुरु एंड सर्विंग कृष्णा, एंड व्हाट इज द लिंक देयर?
हरे कृष्णा. So Srila Prabhupada used to give this beautiful example, analogy, that if you want to please or become favorite of a very rich man, what can you do? He has all the riches in the world, but if he has his son, and you, even if it's 1 rupee back in those days, or for $1 in this case, you can get a nice ice cream to the son, right? The son, when you give him an ice cream, the son would be happy, or like candy or chocolate, or something sweet thing that you give to the son that the son likes, then the son would become happy and the father would become happy. And he would be ready to accept you and give you blessings. So similarly, our spiritual master, he is constantly serving Lord Shri Krishna. He is very dear to Lord Shri Krishna. So by constantly, he is serving. So when we serve our spiritual master, we serve Lord Shri Krishna, through our spiritual master, and being a very dear son of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Krishna becomes pleased when we serve his devotees who are very dear to him. Again, we talked about Bhakt Vatsala. So his devotees are very dear to him. So when we serve the devotees, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says of the three essential principles of Dharma for this age, Jivodaya, Namaruchi, Vaishnava Seva. That's why not just our spiritual master, we should be serving all Vaishnavas as well. And in Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Mangala's prayers, the one that we sing, there is Yasya Prasada, Bhagavad Prasada, Yasya Prasad Gati Nagati Kutopi. So when we serve the spiritual master, by his blessings, right, we can attain everything. We can attain Lord's, the love of Godhead. Yet at the same time, if we are not able to please our spiritual master, then we have no destination. So again, and then how do you serve? That is also very important when you are serving. There are two ways we can serve our spiritual master, two types of sevas. One is Vani Seva, second one is Vapu Seva. Vapu Seva is, serving his physical form. We are making sure that we are offering nice Mahaprasad to our spiritual master. We are taking care of his spiritual master. We are helping him in his mission. So those are, Vapu Seva, his, form, his manifested form of our spiritual master. Vani Seva is following the instructions of our spiritual master. If our spiritual master says, chant attentively and preach, then we chant attentively and then we preach by following. So his Vani Seva is even more superior than his Vapu Seva, which is serving his external form, serving his manifested form. So we should be following the instructions. Srila Prabhupada, he became glorious because he followed the instructions of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada, and he brought this knowledge to the Western world in English language. And we should understand the essence how to serve. Srila Prabhupada received the instruction that you should, translate the books. He could have just translated and left it as it is. No. He understood the purport of that instruction, that his spiritual master is saying, why don't you translate it in English language, preach it to the Western world, and preach it all around the world, all around the universe, so that this transcendental knowledge is, available to all, so that all become blissful and this planet Earth becomes Vaikuntha. So he understood the purpose behind it. Hare Krishna. So yes, pleasing the spiritual master is the essence from all the Shastras and is essential principle in the life of a devotee. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So before we go to next question, I want to just summarize what you said. We can please Krishna by pleasing the spiritual master, because Krishna guides us from within our hearts and spiritual master guides us from outside. And so the way we can please spiritual master is in two ways, by Vani or by physical association. And when we serve spiritual master based on the instructions he gives us, we please him and we please Krishna. Hare Krishna. So I don't see any more questions, so I will present one last question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Often people, when they read about bhakti and pure bhakti, they want to know how to become a pure devotee of Bhagwan. So can you share something about it?
The process is very simple. Take to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Try to regulate your life by, eat, sleep, meditate, define, regulating this, just enough to sustain while getting up early in the morning, finish your 16 rounds, attentive chanting, with full meditation, and then, search out Chaitya Guru. Lord Krishna is super soul in our heart. He's Chaitya Guru within. He will guide us to find a Guru outside, like we said, right? Within and without. Lord is within us as Paramatma, and without us means outside us as our spiritual master. Tad vidhi paripatena pariprashnena sevaya updekshanti tajnanam jnaninas tattva-darshana. Tad vidhi paripatena. Please try to understand the process that we have to submissively, surrender to a bona fide spiritual master. So there are 4 paramparas: Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Shri Sampradaya, Kumara Sampradaya, coming from Sant Kumar. Brahma Sampradaya is coming from Lord Brahma. Shri Sampradaya coming from Goddess Lakshmi. Rudra Sampradaya coming from Lord Shiva. And Kumara Sampradaya coming from the Chatur Kumars, the 4 sons headed by Sant Kumar of Lord Brahma, the sons of Lord Brahma. And they are getting this knowledge. They are connected directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So in these Sampradayas, and so in ISKCON is in Brahma Sampradaya, and further it's in Gaudiya Sampradaya, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Radha Krishna together. Anta Krishna, inside his Krishna, and outside his Radha. He is appearing in the mood of Radha, and he also appeared in this. So we should take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, serve him, and to serve him, to please Lord Shri Krishna, and inquire from him submissively, because he can reveal the truth. And further, we can engage in bhajana kriya, the 9 process of devotional service, and thus continue to build quality. First is quantity, followed by quality, so that we can attain the perfection, nityam bhagavata sevaya, constantly serving the Lordship through various services to attain perfection and become pure devotee ultimately. Hare Krishna. So that is the process. In 7 days, Parikshit Maharaj becomes a pure devotee of Lord Shri Krishna by hearing. Hare Krishna.
So that was very nice. जीवा तत्वा प्रभु जी ने अभी हमें इंसाइट दिया, इम्पोर्टेंट बात बताई कि how we can become pure devotee by taking shelter of a genuine, bona fide guru, and under a guru's direction we can get trained and we can engage in serving Krishna with love.
And don't forget the 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. They are also very much part of this process.
Along with the chanting of the holy names. And आपने शुरू में बताया, it all begins with the chanting of the holy names. So let me check our viewers, because some of them are still joining, and we are about to end this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam session. जीवा तत्व प्रभु जी ने अभी हमारे कुछ questions भी answer किए हैं. Let me see who all we have here. Hare Krishna, Himanshu Pamnani ji, Jai Kumar ji, Priya Ramnath, Mahesh Goyal, Vinita Naresh ji, Raju Sharma ji, Kailash Gupta, Ramesh Gar. I see a lot of new names today. Deepa Kumar, Manzoor Nadaf, Hare Krishna, Saurav Devnath, Dishalata ji, Raj Kashyap, Mampi Das, Kajal Patel, Sandhya, Aishwarya Mishra. हरे कृष्णा फ्रेंड्स, हमारा फॉर्मेट ये होता है, जीवा तत्वदास प्रभु जी वीकडेज में मॉर्निंग में जब श्रीमद् भागवतम क्लास करते हैं, हमारे टाइम जोन पे इस वक्त मॉर्निंग होती है, इंडिया में इस वक्त इवनिंग होती है, और श्रीमद् भागवतम का ये चैप्टर लेवल पे पूरे लेसन शेयर करते हैं, और उसके बाद हम कुछ आपके क्वेश्चंस को आंसर्स प्रोवाइड करते हैं, कुछ इंसाइट्स प्रोवाइड करते हैं. पद्मिनी, मंजुनाथ, नवीन राव, हरे कृष्णा संध्या राय, हरे कृष्णा रत्न देका, नीलम मोहतवानी, राघवेंद्र एन, हरे कृष्णा प्रदीप शिंदे जी, लीना बिश्नोई, राजकुमार घोष, विनायक कदम, हरे कृष्णा संध्या मुखर्जी, गगन एसके, हरि बोल सभी को, संजय एस चौहान, मोहित यादव, बलराम कुमार, माधवी दास. Hare Krishna. I think I have scrolled back enough and I don't see any more questions. Renu Sharma ji के काफ़ी अच्छे questions थे, and I hope Renu Sharma ji you got your answers. And if you have any more questions, viewers, you can always put them in comments. Prabhuji can check them later on and he can address it. Vishwanath Vishuji, Hare Krishna, Chakradhar Halder, Hare Krishna. So dear viewers, towards the end, please join us for offering Aarti to Lord Narsingadev together with everyone.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please join us for Narsingadevati.
Kashi
भगवान की जय, प्रहलाद महाराज की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, शिला भगवत्पाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल। हरे कृष्णा